What is the significance of human cloning, of frozen embryos, of three-parent children, of genetic manipulation? We'll explore these issues and more on this edition of Life Matters. Brian Johnston is the Western Director of the National Right to Life Committee. He has served in many capacities while advocating for innocent lives, as California Commissioner on Aging, as Chairman of the California Pro-Life Council, on the board of the National Legal Center for the Medically Dependent and Disabled. And now here's our host, Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. We're your program on the right to life, that unique idea that's the foundation of all of our other freedoms. It's the first of the inalienable rights. It's been given to us by our Creator. We've been made in the image and likeness of God. America's founders said, we've been made by a Creator who gave us life. And it isn't the government that gave us life. Our founders actually said the government has a responsibility to protect that gift we've been given. It has a job to protect us and to protect all innocent human beings. That's the foundation of American society and all just society. You need to protect the innocent. It's the reason we have courts, too, to determine who's innocent. The purpose of the law, and any just law, is to protect the innocent. And that's the premise of the right to life. Your life is valuable. The government doesn't own you. It can't do whatever it wants with you. But it can be involved with you to protect your life from those who would seek to harm you or take your life. That's why we have policemen with guns and badges. So this issue of the right to life is an essential element of society. We talk about that on Life Matters, and we examine particular issues. Today, we're going to be talking about California's Proposition 14 on the 2020 ballot. Proposition 14 seeks more funding for a very unsuccessful program that is California Institute for Regenerative Medicine, embryonic stem cell research and cloning. They've had billions, that's B as in Betty, billions of dollars given to them by the state. They haven't had any successes. We're going to talk about that. If you don't live in California, this still applies to you. You need to understand this debate. It won't be going away, this issue of embryonic stem cell research and cloning. If you'd like to go back to our podcast, go back to Life Matters, episode 62, with Dr. David Prentice. Dr. Prentice is one of the leading experts on ethical stem cell research and cloning, and we'll touch on some of those discussed issues. But we're going to go in depth right now into the politics of California. Again, if you don't live in California, don't let your eyes glaze. Wipe those eyes, because this still applies to you. There's some very important principles I want you to understand. And that is this issue, like many issues that the popular media throws out and pushes on public sentiment, there's certain tools they use, and this is a great time for you to understand them. The very first is emotions. The media loves to manipulate your emotions, the emotions of your loved ones, the emotions of individuals. Human beings are by nature compassionate. Those emotions can be manipulated, though. And very often, if you only make decisions based on emotions, you can make some wrong decisions, seriously wrong. I'll speak personally. I know in my life, as I look back, when I have made wrong decisions, invariably it was when I let my emotions be my guide. So there are principles and there are ideas that are valid, and that's what we talk about in Life Matters. We want to equip you with facts, and we want you to understand the principles that are at stake. So emotions, very common on this issue of embryonic stem cell research. There's a lot of emotion. We'll talk about that in a second. Then the other thing that the media loves to do once it's whipped up emotions is misrepresent. Misrepresentation is a staple of the popular media. And unless you can cut through that fog, you're going to be taken down a primrose path to death. And literally when it comes to the right to life, whether it's killing babies, whether it's human experimentation, whether it's euthanizing those who are sick, actually legalizing and institutionalizing medical killing, medical death, dismissing human lives. That's the opposite of the right to life. And once a society starts to do that, things get very messy, very quickly, and the ethical standards become very foggy. We want to equip you to understand these things. So, as I said, we're talking about Proposition 14 on the ballot in 2020 in California. You can find out more if you go to oppose14.com. That's oppose14.com. You can see a lot of these talking points we'll be mentioning here. And you can also help out in this cause because we're up against literally multiple millions of dollars. They want to spend multiple millions because they're going to get multiple billions. You know, the president of the CIRM, Mr. Klein, who put this on the ballot initially back in 2004, he makes more money per year from this than the president. Well, our president currently donates his salary. Mr. Klein gets $449,000 per year to oversee this CIRM, California Institute for Regenerative Medicine. So there's a lot of money involved, and they're spending millions more. They want another $5.5 billion of your tax money to sponsor this program. So you need to understand why it's wrong. We're going to go into some depth when we come back, but I want to tell you how this started. This actually started in 2001 when then President George W. Bush, because of the pressure of the medical experts, again, I put that in quotes, and the media, there was a lot of pressure on the federal government to fund ethically questionable forms of experimentation using human embryos. George W. Bush on August 9th of 2001 declared by executive order that the federal government would no longer approve this. There had been existing cell lines taken from embryos. He said that's going to stop. We will not allow any further medical experimentation using the human embryo. There are existing cell lines, and they're still out there, from embryos before that, and the federal government is using those for other experiments. But there's been a lot of pressure, and you're going to understand when we come back. I'm going to explain some of the principles and what Dr. Prentice has talked about. The fact is that this is a very attractive idea if you don't have any ethical guidelines. This is a very fetching concept if you use simplified medicine, simplified science. And I'll come back and explain what that means. By simplified science, I mean it's misrepresenting the final conclusion. And as you know, if you've been with Life Matters, we love science. That's true science. That uses objective facts, the laws of nature and nature's God. Everything that's around you is reality. And you can learn a lot from reality. The purpose of science is to help you understand more and come to valid conclusions. That's a good thing. But a lot of what's called science, it leaps to conclusions. As I said, the media has two popular tools that they use. First, emotions. They love any emotional debate. They will charge up those emotions. But secondly, they use misrepresentations. We're going to have a chance to explain why that's the case now in dealing with embryonic stem cell research and why you should, if you're in California, be sure that you're working to oppose California's Proposition 14 on the November 2020 ballot.
Life Matters continues after this.
Are you willing to step up to be a lifeguard? We're asking you to consider becoming a Life Matters lifeguard. On Life Matters, we cut to the depths of this cultural battle of ideas that has robbed America of its core values and robbed the innocent of their right to life. Anything you can pledge is appreciated. But if you pledge $19 a month, we will make you part of the Life Matters lifeguard team, getting you the important tools and dynamic information to help save lives and encourage others in understanding the lurking dangers in today's deadly cross-currents of culture. Your pledge helps us with our costs of broadcast. It keeps the full understanding of the right to life going out over our numerous radio stations and also facilitates the important podcast that carries even more programming. Please go to the front page of the Life Matters website and click on the donate button. Your donation is deeply appreciated.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Well, welcome back. You're listening to Life Matters, your program on the right to life and the very particular battle of ideas that's raging right now for your mind and the mind of your loved ones regarding this issue. What does it mean? Why should we even care? Right now, we're talking about embryonic stem cell research and why you need to understand just how seductive it is. You know, you have stem cells in your body. You're designed that way. And when you fell down as a kid and skinned your knee, well, you know, your body said, oh, you just lost some skin. You have cells inside your body that have not yet been given a job assignment. They then, it's miraculous in many ways, they then know they've got a job assignment, and your body sends those stem cells to your epidermis on your knee to help replace it, to grow new skin. And they're given a new job assignment. So all of your body is made of cells. Cells that have an assignment grow into what's known as an organ. So all of the cells in your liver have a common purpose. All of the cells in your largest organ, which we just talked about, your skin, that's your largest organ. They have a very specific purpose. Those are skin cells, epidermal cells. But you have a storehouse where you can make new stem cells. As you get older, you make fewer and fewer stem cells. But you actually make them for many parts of your body in different places. In your bone marrow is where you make the cells that are going to be turned into blood and into various organs that have to do with your circulatory system. They actually are produced in your bone marrow. That's why years ago they used to ask for bone marrow transplants. They were actually looking for stem cells. They didn't actually call them stem cells, but that's what they were looking for. They're the cells that will get a new job assignment. So that's exciting as we've discovered new things about the human body and how it works. And they have found ways to take your existing stem cells, what are known as adult stem cells, and basically help direct them to different parts of your body to fix your body. So there's aspects of heart disease that have been cured. People have actually had parts of their heart muscle that was lost restored using stem cell therapy, but they were using their own stem cells. Here's where the scientists come in and they get a little bizarre. They called those cells pluripotent. Pluri means many, and has many potential applications. Pluripotent cells. So those are fascinating. But one thing they found is that when you were very young in the womb, when you were an embryo, those stem cells, they call them omnipotent. That means they can become any type of cell in the human body. Omnipotent, because when you're an embryo, you were so small, and yet look at you now. You grew into all those cells that are your body. And so scientists have said, well, this is the holy grail. If we can get omnipotent stem cells, we now can manipulate them, cure anything. And so they have attempted to do that. As I said, there have been several illnesses that have been hard to fight, that have been very difficult for medicine to deal with. And back in 2001 up through 2004, because that's when the media really pushed hard in California. And a man by the name of John Klein said, if the federal government's not going to cure these illnesses, then by gum in California, I'll make sure we do that. Mr. Klein had a son, tragically, that had type 1 diabetes, and he wanted to see if that could be cured. And again, emotions are very, very important. And all of us that have lost loved ones, we understand that emotions can really, really impact you. But he knew nothing about science. He was actually a real estate mogul. And coincidentally, he's continued. A lot of this money that they got, the billions, actually has gone into their real estate empire for CIRM. They have incredible buildings down in Irvine, California. So a lot of that money they got went into real estate. We'll talk in a moment about the studies. There were some studies they funded, all of them unsuccessful. But emotions are very powerful. And so there is the issue of diabetes, very common. But two of the emotional illnesses that were presented in 2004, when Proposition 71 was on the ballot, again, they got billions of dollars. They've spent it all. They've had no successes, and they're coming back for more. Two of the promised cures were for Christopher Reeve. Christopher Reeve, a very famous actor, he fell in a riding accident and was paralyzed. Everyone had great sympathy for him, and he was also a poster child for Proposition 71. And it was presented that through these experimentations, Christopher Reeve will be able to walk again. We don't want to stand in the way of that. It was also suggested that Michael J. Fox, whom everyone loved, just that nice, happy guy, happy-go-lucky Michael J. Fox. Many of you know Michael J. Fox from Back to the Future series, other television shows. Real likable guy. But he had been diagnosed with Parkinson's at a young age, and this was tragic. We could cure Michael J. Fox's Parkinson's. How dare you stand in the way of this? There's no ethical thing that should stand in the way of that, because we can have cures. And therefore, the conjecture that there can be cures allows us to dismiss any ethical questions about using other human beings for those cures. And in fact, what happened is that there have been experiments in other countries using embryonic stem cells. Embryonic stem cells do grow. They've been put in brains. This happened in Japan and also in Mexico, in the hopes that they would grow new cells that would cure the Parkinson's. And they did grow, but they grew into cancerous tumors of bones and hair and teeth, because those embryos want to grow to be who they're designed to be. And that's why we found, and history and science has proven it this whole time, there have been no cures, only problems from embryonic stem cells. And it's adult stem cells that have proven to be the most effective as we have deeper understanding over how our body is designed. We can help those stem cells that are already in our body be directed to help our bodies. There have been incredible cures that have come through appropriate ethical stem cell therapy. So as I said, even if you're not in California and you aren't going to be voting on Proposition 14, understand that the media uses misrepresentation and emotions in order to accomplish what they want, but they don't always present all the facts. And the common thing that's done is they will drop or add adjectives as if they're part of the whole story. As I said, stem cell research has been incredibly effective. I personally am an advocate for stem cell research having to do with adult stem cells. But what happened in 2004 is that the CIRM dedicated itself to only using those things that the president declared unethical: embryonic stem cell research, human cloning, so you could have lots of these embryos then that you could play with as things. They would be medical playthings. And it really raises the issue that we saw for many, many years. A 16-year-old girl in 1836 wrote a book about this, about medical science being used in an industrial way and dismissing the value and significance of individual human lives, man creating life as he wanted to do it. And that book was Frankenstein. That issue of medical research that sees human lives as things rather than as a reflection of something much higher. You know, there is a definition of Western civilization that we've used on our show, and that is this, that Western civilization views the human person as more than a mere animal. Many other cultures, and today medical science in some places, will view human beings as just a biological animal. That's the summation of what it is to be a human being. And it misses the real heart of what life is about and what distinguishes civilization. Western civilization believes that we have a spiritual quality, a spiritual nature. Now, as you know, not everybody agrees with your version of spiritual, but the fact is, it's the acknowledgement that human beings are more than animals and therefore need to be regarded and treated as such. What Immanuel Kant said, every person should be treated as an end in themselves and not as a means to an end. And he was a philosopher that said some amazing things, but that's called the categorical imperative. If you have any questions of what's ethical dealing with other people, if you're treating them as a means to an end, then you're doing the wrong thing. Every human being needs to be treated as an end in and of themselves. So in California's Proposition 14, they want another $5.5 billion for these failed programs. There have been no successes. They've had nothing but failure. And they have not kept the promises they had laid out. They said there would be money coming back to the state. There hasn't been. There's been a lot of abuse. There's basically 4 aspects of Proposition 14 you want to be aware of, that it is morally unethical. We've talked about that, about how embryonic stem cell research requires you to kill another unique human being and then to use their body parts ostensibly to benefit others. You're using them as a means to an end. It's also scientifically unproven, though. Even though they're using science, there's a lot of hype. And it's this hype that's being sold regularly through the media. But the hype doesn't bear out scientifically. Again, science means you have to come to a conclusion. If the conclusion that's ultimately arrived at is not what you say it is, then that's bad science. They're not really using science. They're using bad science. And you need to hold them accountable to that. So this is scientifically unproven. And it's very important that you understand that. You can see more at the website oppose14.com. Go to oppose14.com. It's a coalition of Californians who realize we can't be throwing California's money at this again. We certainly don't want to. But it isn't just that it's medically unnecessary, and that's part of it, is there's so many better benefits from true stem cell research. Again, the adjective is embryonic, true stem cell research of auto-donation. But the private sector's funding that because the private sector can make money off that. When they get those patents make money. So if you want to do ethical medical research, there's money for you. You don't have to get government money. But not only that, it's fiscally unsound and publicly unaccountable that the Oversight Committee doesn't have control. The legislature has no ability to intervene in these billions and billions of dollars of California state money. The legislature can do nothing. Members of the existing Oversight Committee now are deeply alarmed at what CIRM is already doing and their abuse of power. When we come back, we'll talk about what the Little Hoover Commission. The Little Hoover Commission is a commission in California that examines government programs, as have others who've been involved with CIRM. It is pretty irresponsible and has rendered great benefit to the people running it, but not to medicine and not to the people of California. We'll be right back.
Life Matters continues after this.
Well, now we have a special opportunity for Life Matters listeners wherever you are. You can be on the air. That's right. If you have a question for Life Matters, we have a special way for you to ask that question. Tell us where you're listening from, speak slowly and clearly, and you can record a message. Go to lifematters.life. That's lifematters.life. Scroll to the bottom of the page, and there you'll see Send a Message to Brian Johnston. Using your computer's microphone, you can record a message, and it'll record clearly. You can't go longer than 90 seconds, but please feel free if you have a question or a comment. Make sure you keep it polite. We do have to edit, and we can't put impolite stuff on the air, but we do want to hear from you. That's lifematters.life. Scroll to the bottom of the page and give us your thoughts.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Welcome back. You're listening to Life Matters, and we're talking about a very specific issue for the entire world right now, medical research and the ethical use of human embryos, but more pointedly, for the state of California, an issue on the ballot, Proposition 14 on the November ballot, and it deals with embryonic stem cell research and throwing now an additional $5.5 billion of tax money into what's already been wasted by the California Institute on Regenerative Medicine. I want to remind you that you can go to oppose14.com. Go there on the web. You'll get the information about Proposition 14 and have an opportunity to help. It's a coalition of many different Californians. I want to thank certain folks. California Pro-Life, of course, is involved, but many other organizations that are concerned about the fiscal irresponsibility. I do want to thank the Scholl Institute of Bioethics. But there's many other folks at churches. The Roman Catholic Church of California is opposing this, and people of goodwill who are looking at the real facts. It's important that you understand the facts. Now, in California, we have a body. I've known members of this organization. It's actually a rotating chairmanship and rotating membership. Often, members of the legislature are appointed to what's called the Little Hoover Commission. And the Little Hoover Commission goes and overviews various state-funded programs. The Little Hoover Commission is deeply concerned about the CIRM. You see, the CIRM, California Institute for Regenerative Medicine, the billion-dollar spenders, they have no legislative oversight. And there was no legislative action to create this. It was entirely sold via the media to the public, and a public that had been misled and misunderstood using emotions and misrepresentations. We talked about that. But the Little Hoover Commission is concerned because of this lack of oversight. It's required, if we're spending that kind of money, that somebody be involved in overseeing this. But there is no oversight. It also, in Prop 71, it changed the Constitution so that you couldn't have oversight. In addition to that, this new proposition, Proposition 14, again changes and puts in cement this CIRM so that it's there forever. So this is a hard thing to do, to actually change the Constitution in that kind of way. So obviously, there's something wrong here. In principle, The fact that there is no oversight by the legislature gives alarm bells. It was created without legislative input or debate. And again, as I said, the CIRM president, he makes $490,000 a year just for holding that post. There have been no successes in what they've produced. None. In fact, only problems, as we've talked about. These types of embryonic stem cell research and the use of clones then that are created and taken apart at the embryonic stage, they only have created problems for the patients. So this is not just bad medicine, it's dark medicine, very problematic. And the commitment is an ideological one. Well, it has to be done. We talked about that ethically and why this seems attractive to some people. And Mary Shelley pointed it out in the book Frankenstein. There's some people who view science as being, if it can be done, it should be done. And that clearly eliminates any ethical questions. And that's exactly what happened in this particular case. This is the use of medicine dismissing, well, it's supposedly for the benefit of mankind. It dismisses the individual value of each and every life. And that is the definition of what should be considered unethical. The Los Angeles Times recently reprinted an essay by a gentleman by the name of Michael Hiltzik. Mr. Hiltzik wrote a book called Big Science. He also just published a book, Iron Empires. And among other things, he points out how science is sucking up money through hype. He says hype has become an inextricable part of science because it can generate millions of dollars of support. Consider the 2004 campaign to pass Proposition 71, which created the multiple billion-dollar California stem cell program. And as he says, I have reported before, the measure was sold to a gullible public via candy-coated images of Christopher Reeve walking again and Michael J. Fox cured of Parkinson's. So this isn't just us because pro-life folks see this as the unethical use of medicine. There's falsehoods being sold that are being hyped to the public. This was not introduced to the legislature. You know why the legislature is important? Every legislature in the U.S. is bicameral. And what that means, except for Nebraska, they only have one house. But when you have legislation, it goes to committees. There's debates in committees. Both sides of an issue are examined and debated. Then it goes to another committee. Then it goes to the floor of that house, where it's examined and debated. Then that particular issue goes to the other house of the legislature. And they're the same process. So whenever you pass laws, they're supposed to be examined by representatives who are supposed to listen to the public and also look at the facts. That's how laws are supposed to be made. I'm going to urge you to vote no on Proposition 14. Go to oppose14.com to find out more and to help out the coalition that is opposing this very, very dangerous proposition on the California ballot.
Life Matters is a production of the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of National Right to Life.